I'm Steve Lascalzo, and this is The Way. You are listening to the July 2024 This is The Way podcast Star Wars News Update. The Acolyte Season 1 is now streaming on Disney+. The show is controversial. The ratings have been questionable. Streaming totals released by Disney and Disney Plus are unreliable. Lucasfilm altered the story of Star Wars with this entry, and whether the opinion is that's a good thing or a bad thing really does seem to influence how people express their feelings about the show. Now, I have not been shy. I do not support Leslie Headland's politics or really the way that Lucasfilm intends to present the Star Wars universe going forward. I have liked The Mandalorian's first 2 seasons. Well, I loved them, really. There have been no major issues with Andor for me. I actually did like many aspects of the Book of Boba Fett, and there were some parts that I didn't like. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series would have been even worse if it wasn't for the Obi-Wan and Vader scenes, but there are definitely very watchable moments in that show. I like The Force Awakens. I liked Rogue One. The Last Jedi, well, to me, that's not just the worst Star Wars film, but a terrible film all around. The Rise of Skywalker wasn't good, but I largely give that a pass because it had to follow The Last Jedi. Solo could have been much better, but it wasn't terrible. And all of that is live-action Star Wars that I'm talking about. I do want more. I just don't think Headland should be allowed to be involved in any part of it. Strike 1, Strike 2, Strike 3, all in one season for me. It's a failure of ideas, not just execution. Now, I know that Filoni and others had a say in what was allowed to be shown through the series, but the buck stops with Headland for me. Now, many others have expressed similar sentiments. It might be the worst writing in Star Wars was one I saw. The choices made for the characters made little sense. Now, since it's fiction, anything involving plotting, story, dialogue, all that's in the hands of the creators. I mean, you do have to conform to Star Wars, but they didn't even do that. And the acting has also been criticized as terrible. And you know what? I agree. Critics say Amandla Stenberg did a terrible job portraying Osha and May. I agree. Carrie-Anne Moss wasn't in the show nearly enough for me as Indara. Lee Jung-jae, for all his effort, as great as he might have been in Squid Game, I don't think he was able to carry the show as Soul, and almost all of the other supporting characters were not good. I did think Manny Jacinto is a good actor. I just think the dialogue giving to that character of the stranger, Khmer, whoever you want to call him, I don't think he had much to work with. Look, Lucasfilm needs to get back in the win column. Even casual Star Wars fans have been telling me how bad this show and how bad Disney Star Wars has been. How little they are excited for new Star Wars projects. And I have to say, it's only going to get tougher for audiences if they keep turning out terrible content. But all of that is just my opinion.
Everything's going to be all right, kid.
Okay, it is time to update you on Star Wars news since our last news update podcast. The Acolyte's 8-episode run came to an end with cameos by Darth Plagueis and the back of Yoda's head. The show's out, alright? It has been for weeks. And all the discussion you can find in podcasts and social media, at least the social media formerly known as Twitter, all of those things that I mentioned there, those are some of the kindest sentiments you can hear. At least ones that are based on reviewing the show. People out there do love the show, but they totally ignore anything about the writing, the plotting, and the acting. They just say, I love it, it's great, I love everything about it, I love that there's romance in Star Wars between a dark Force user, and if any of that was in a different show, they would be talking about how much, how oppressive Khmer was and how he's tricking this woman. But because it's Star Wars and because people have a skewed vision and just want to support the creator and creators like Leslie Headland, they don't care what the show looks like. Look, the writers of this show have a different vision of the Force from what has been portrayed in the past. I know that's an opinion, but it is an opinion supported by facts. I said last month I thought Leslie Headland was laying groundwork for the introduction to Plagueis, and guess what? She is. But you can't write things like Osha and May are the same person, but tell and show differently during the show, and then say at the end, oh, they're the same person, and then call that a twist. Good writers know how to foreshadow. Good writers were not involved in this show, in The Acolyte. I think Headland and the writers' room don't understand how to make the Sith hide in plain sight. So if you're not able to do that, or you don't know how to get your head around it, then do a different story. They resorted to having the Jedi lie, and you could even tell a story that had the Jedi lying, but they resorted to having legacy characters involved in it. So critics have an opening now to call Star Wars that came before tainted. I get it. People will say things like, well, that Star Wars still exists. If you like it, just go ahead and watch that and don't watch the new stuff. But these two things, if they are said to coexist, these two different kinds of Star Wars, you can't ignore that. I certainly can just watch the original shows. But if I watch this other Star Wars, it doesn't feel like it's part of the same universe. Any criticism is still being shouted down as racist, misogynistic, bigoted. Now look, Rotten Tomatoes reinstated their audience score at some time after removing it. It was down below 14%, but it was 17% when they brought it back for some reason. And then it was 38% rating on IMDb, and there was a 60% rating on IGN, and all of those are failing grades. Failing grades out of 100%. I can say now with confidence that it was the right move for me not to cover this show for the podcast. I think it contributes to a negative view of Star Wars, and it is not worth my time. And I don't say that lightly. Now, will there be a season 2? Social media accounts have been making this claim that Headland is the one that's begging fans for a writing campaign, and I've seen some interviews where she seems to do that. Please help us greenlight another season. Thankfully, no announcement has been made yet, and I think you give it time, you see if there really is like this groundswell of support months after the show has been streamed, and then maybe you talk about another season, but I don't see where you could possibly go, and I don't want Headland to be involved in it in any way.
Okay, then.
Let me move on to something more positive. Last week, Lee Isaac Chung's Twisters movie, the long-awaited sequel to the Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton movie that came out, what was it, the 90s or 2000s? Well, Twisters, the sequel, was number 1 at the box office its opening week, and then was only dethroned this past weekend at the box office by Deadpool and Wolverine from Marvel. So after about 2 weeks, it pulled in more than $150 million and seems to be doing pretty well at the box office. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, Lee Isaac Chung directed an episode of The Mandalorian, and Katie M. O'Brien has a role in the movie. She played Elia Kane in The Mandalorian Season 2 and 3, and if you're having trouble remembering who she was, that's the rehabilitated Imperial officer that sets up Dr. Pershing by luring him to an out-of-service Star Destroyer, and he steals some lab equipment, and then on the way out, she turns him in and then turns on that mind-wiping device at the end of the episode from, 0 to 11 in the Season 3 episode, Chapter 19, The Convert. Now, if you listen to my past podcasts, you know I love finding little connections in casting like that. This one, I'm reasonably sure, is not due to the casting director of the movie, because that's someone who's different than the casting director for the episodes of The Mandalorian. It's more likely because of the director, since, as I mentioned, Chung directed her in both that Mandalorian episode and his recently released blockbuster movie. So how about that?
Don't you ever want to do anything exciting?
Trying to keep with positive notes on Star Wars, I am excited for the Skeleton Crew, and I think that's the best place for me to put my energy into Star Wars at the moment. And yes, I know I've seen some posts on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, that some people who have seen cuts of the movie, or the show, I'm sorry, have said it's really awful. Well, I'm going to wait until I see some footage, and I'm still going to be as positive as I can about new live-action Star Wars content because I want more of it. I just want it to be good.
Yeah? Good.
The note that I have for you today is about a social media post on X, formerly known as Twitter, that indicated Star Wars Skeleton Crew wall art could be found already in a Hobby Lobby somewhere in Middle America. Now, I am not sure how that could possibly happen by accident, unless they shipped some of this stuff to Hobby Lobby and Hobby Lobby did not have any idea about, this has to go out on this date. We still don't have any trailer footage or anything like that. All we know is a few things. Jude Law is the adult lead in the show, and now reports have his character's name as Jod, Jod. The children on the show seem to be called Fern, Wim, that's W-I-M, and KB, just the letters, KB. There's also a young Ortolan, the blue creature that looks like the keyboard player, Max Rebo from The Return of the Jedi in the Book of Boba Fett. Well, that young Ortolan is named Neel, N-E-E-L. And the ship that they're supposedly going to be on is called the Onyx Cinder. Now, how did I become aware of all of this? Well, there's a collectibles marketing leak. The Lego set comes with the characters and ship, and it's supposedly going to cost around $130 with an announcement coming August 1st.
No way.
San Diego's Comic-Con just wrapped up, and there are no new announcements for Star Wars movies, and the biggest announcement was probably Robert Downey Jr. returning to the MCU, but in a villainous role. Just think if somebody like Samuel L. Jackson came back instead of Mace Windu and he came back as a Sith in The Acolyte or something like that. There are reports, however, that the next Star Wars movie that is in pre-production, The Mandalorian and Grogu, will start filming soon, but that would mean Pedro Pascal won't be around for any of the primary shoot. That's because he's currently involved filming the Fantastic Four's latest reboot. Now, this is not really strange news, since we all know he only voices Din Djarin unless the helmet's removed. And yes, that's happened a few times in the show, but brief scenes like that could always be handled in reshoots. Also, now that the living waters on Mandalore are able to be once again visited because of the events of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, well, removing your helmet isn't really that big a deal anymore, right? Because you can just go and bathe in the waters. No, I think the real concern that came out of San Diego Comic-Con is there are some rumored release dates, and let's see how Marvel and Lucasfilm work together, because yes, there are some rumored conflicts for the Marvel and Star Wars movie release dates, but Disney wants to make money on everything it produces, so it doesn't want to compete with itself.
Here are today's combatants.
Okay, Star Wars gamers, I hope you've been enjoying Star Wars Hunters, and Galaxy of Heroes now is coming to PC and Mac. It's currently in early access. The mobile game will also allow players to sync their data to a PC or Mac version when they play, assuming they've already done that linking of the data in the mobile version. Like you link your account to Facebook, and then you can link it in the game, in whatever version of the game you're playing. Players can also expect the same types of gameplay between the versions, but if you use it on a PC or Mac, there's going to be upscaled graphics through the EA app. One more gaming note this month, and that concerns the upcoming Star Wars Outlaws game. And it's not really a note as much as, like, developers of the game have been signaling it's ready for release for some time. There's a lot of articles that are coming out and mentions in online trade publications. Now, they've signaled that it's ready for release, though. They say, I think, it's gold. The game has gone gold. So if you're wondering, that's a month ahead of schedule since the game is supposed to become available August 30th. Gone are the days, though, of mostly physical copies. When a game goes gold, it's supposed to be ready to be boxed up and shipped. But the developers probably still have time to work on polishing things up since, you can fix newly discovered bugs. You can update something. But I think that just signals that the core team that's working on the game is now probably going to be tasked to come up with like microtransaction, DLC stuff, and that the game is primarily ready for release. So whatever is available now will probably be what the final version looks like. But like I said, games nowadays are made to make money off of microtransactions. So I think that's what we're going to see. And we'll probably hear a lot more about that in the week or two leading up to August 30th when the game is supposed to become available to play.
C-3PO, Gamorrean Guard, and Jabba the Hutt playset, each sold separately.
Moving on to collectors. Are you feeling vintage? I mean, if you're like me and you're born the year Episode 4 debuted, well, you might be considered vintage by young people. There are a lot of collectibles coming from Hasbro, and this month I've got a lot of entries in the Vintage Collection series. Oh, and before I get started with announcements for the new items, I want to mention the Hasbro Pulse HasLabs project that I included in last month's news update podcast, the Vintage Collection Mos Eisley Cantina playset. Well, funding came in at 184%, so it will be manufactured and it will ship. So if you purchased the base or deluxe set, that's going to come with the Greedo and Nabran Leeds characters, but not Arlyle Wolfman Shoes, because it only hit just about 14,000 backers. It was just north of the 14,000 backer number, but that means it's well shy of the 17,000 backer number needed to include all three figure releases with the base $600 something Cantina set. All right, now on to new stuff. And since I mentioned Vintage Collection playsets, there's a couple more. Hasbro announced a $60 Moff Gideon's Imperial Light Cruiser Hallway, and that comes with one generic Mandalorian Privateer figure. So not Dark Troopers or Luke, and that is a missed opportunity in my opinion. The marketing doesn't even appear to suggest that it's even involved with that show. That was one of the most widely accepted and enjoyed scenes was Luke coming down the hallway, right? I mean, I would think that would be what you would want to market, but all the pictures I saw focused more on other figures sold separately, like Axe Woves, Bo-Katan Kryze, Din Djarin, and even Fennec Shand appeared in one of the images. So this thing is available now for pre-order, and it's the hallway and just that one character, but it ships December 1st of this year, so it is in time for Christmas. Same shipping date and price of $60 for a Vintage Collection, the Armorer's Forge playset. This does come with the armor as she's outfitted on that planet, that Season 3 Forge location that's in the cave that's next to the lake, but it also comes with a scale-sized Grogu. Now, from the image, the set doesn't look very large, but there's lots of accessories, tool accessories, and like I said, Grogu. So that is a real selling point, and much more reasonably priced at $60 when you include that stuff. There's a vintage set of 4 figures, unnamed Mandalorian Shriekhawks, with 13 accessories for around $65, and that's said to be exclusive on Amazon and Hasbro Pulse for an average of $16.25 per character. And at $65 for just 4 characters that don't even have names, you know, if I had a do not buy category, this would be on it.
Uh-oh. It's not good.
Also available for pre-order now with shipping on December 1st, a vintage series Mandalorian Imperial base version at $17. That's Din Djarin as seen in the Moff Gideon Imperial base on Mandalore in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. 2 accessories, one of the Imperial Mandalorian Commando jetpacks, and just 1 blaster. But I did notice this version of The Mandalorian does have a working blaster holster, according to what I saw on the image. There's a vintage collection Bo-Katan Plaisir 15 version, also for $17. She comes with an interchangeable helmet, 2 blasters, and the Darksaber.
This is the way.
Then a vintage collection Peridia version of Ahsoka Tano from the Ahsoka show for $17. The only accessories I saw listed were her colorless bladed sabers that the website called her signature sabers. And this is the version from the show, so it resembles Rosario Dawson, not the animated drawing of Ahsoka Tano. A vintage collection Star Wars Jedi Survivor Edition Jetpack Stormtrooper, listed at $17, and it also has a December 1st shipping date. 2 accessories, a blaster, and the namesake jetpack for the video game character. 1 more $17 pre-order in the vintage collection. That's Grand Admiral Thrawn, the Ahsoka show version, so it's a blue-painted Lars. 1 accessory, his blaster. But like I mentioned with The Mandalorian before, it does have an accompanying picture on the website that shows a working holster, so at least his blaster has somewhere to go. The vintage collection series Cobb Vanth in Boba Fett's armor, it's called a deluxe figure. It will be slightly more expensive at $25. It will ship 2 months earlier, though, on October 1st. He comes with Fett's jetpack, an interchangeable head and helmet, 2 blasters, and 2 flame effects. It does not appear that Fett's chest piece can be removed, but $25 is more like a Black Series price, and it's only vintage collection quality. And then there's a vintage collection Mandalorian and Blurg for $40, also shipping October 1st. And that's the Arvana 7 version, the one of the Mandalorian before he gets all his shiny Beskar armor. It's where he learns to ride the creature that Queel has on his farm. And that set comes with a blaster rifle, blaster, saddle, and reins. And those vintage collection figures that I just mentioned, all of those are able to be pre-ordered now if you visit the Hasbro Pulse website.
Curious.
There are some Black Series figures also that are currently able to be pre-ordered. The Acolyte's Jedi Order Tracker Basil and Master Vernestra Rowe each have a $25 price tag, and they have February 1st, 2025 shipping dates. Rowe does not have a whip. It appears that she just has her a usual looking lightsaber in the purple bladed lightsaber. Doesn't look anything like a whip. Basil's lone accessory is the pip droid. So I know he was involved a little bit with it, but that's his lone accessory. Then there are pre-orders available now for Black Series Edition Peridia versions of Ahsoka Tano, and then a Mandalore version of an Imperial Remnant Commando. Those are both $25 each as well. Those have an earlier shipping date, December 1st, instead of February 1st, 2025, December 1st, 2024. Ahsoka just comes again with 2 lightsabers. The Commando comes with a jetpack and 2 blasters. One of the most interesting available for pre-order items was IG-12 Black Series Deluxe version. And notice I said IG-12. That's because this is the one that Grogu could operate like a mech suit. The one that the Anzellans worked on, if you remember, in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. $34. Okay, so a little more expensive. But this thing comes with 2 little Anzellans, and Grogu. And yes, from the pictures, Grogu does fit inside the chest of IG-12. This thing was built for me. It ships October 1st, and if you go look at the website, I think you'll agree that's probably one of the better looking available figures for sale in the Black Series. Those are all currently available to pre-order. But StarWarsNews.net did clue me into some characters or figures that are coming this fall, and it's Black Series collection editions of a couple Andor characters, a Cassian Andor figure as he appears before his imprisonment, and then a Dedra Miro version in her Imperial uniform. Each one of those characters will list for $25. They presumably ship next year, since they're not even going to be available for pre-order until sometime this fall. They're not available on the website yet. Andor comes with 2 blasters, Miro with a blaster and a datapad. Also in the coming soon but not yet out category, a battle droid riding an STAP. It comes with a few accessories. It also comes with a stand for the small transport attack platform, but that's going to be priced way higher. It's basically like buying 2 characters. It's priced at $50. And last but not least for me this month in collections, I'm going to mention a helmet. A $99 Incinerator Trooper helmet. And it is the effects version of a flame-throwing Imperial Remnant Trooper. I think it's supposed to be the ones that Gideon sent into the Navarro Cantina in Season 1, and then Grogu protected Din Djarin before they escaped through the covert tunnels, because it says the Mandalorian, and I don't remember any other Incinerator Troopers. It also has voice-altering technology, so it'll change your voice to sound like a trooper, which is pretty cool. And since it ships October 1st of this year, it will be available to use with a Halloween costume. Unless, your cranium's too big, of course.
Just one more thing.
Now's the time for Disney Parks news. And the changes to the park ride reservation system in the US are now live. As of the last week, I think it was July 25th, there's no more Genie Plus. It's been removed. It's all Lightning Lane now, with multi-pass and single-pass methods of ride reservations, and then higher-priced single-ride add-ons, in addition to an add-on that was once upon a time... You see what I did there? It was once upon a time part of the normal park experience with FastPass Plus. Now, I could tell you all about it all again, but I'm going to leave something out. So for more information on that tier system, if you've got annual passes or you are going to the park and you want to know about this, please do your own research, because it is slightly different than the old FastPass Plus system, and you don't have as much time to reserve those rides as you used to. It used to be like 30 or 60 days in advance if you were, a hotel, staying at a hotel, but it's not like that anymore. Now, it's different, but that makes sense because there are rides now that are available that didn't even exist back in that FastPass Plus era. To use the new system, you're going to have a ticket, a reserved day to go, of course, and you have to have the latest version of the apps, the My Experience app, the Disney My Experience app, and you're going to need to do a lot of preparation before your trip, and also you're going to need plenty of patience.
I think we can let him off with the warning this time.
I hope you had a great July, and if you think I've missed something or disagree with me, send email to thisisthewaypodcast@gmail.com. My kids are going back to school in a couple of weeks, so yours might be as well, or maybe you go after Labor Day like a lot of the country does, but the summer is almost over, and I think it's been a very interesting one with the Acolyte and the news coming out about some of the other shows and movies. And I hope you'll interact more with us here at This Is The Way podcast. You can find all of our links in one place at Linktree. That's linktr.ee/This Is The Way pod. Thank you so much for joining me, Steve Lascalzo, your host for This Is The Way podcast's July 2024 News Update podcast. May the Force be with you, always.